Ladies and gentlemen, there will come a day when the people you thought would stand with you will walk away. There will come a moment when the applause stops, when the phone doesn't ring, when the crowd disappears, and all you have is you. And in that moment, you will face a choice: collapse under the weight of loneliness, or rise with the strength you built in silence. Life will test you, life will strip you, life will force you to discover the truth that the most powerful person you can ever rely on is staring back at you in the mirror. Learn to stand alone before life forces you to, because nothing is more powerful than knowing you can carry yourself even when no one else is around to hold you up. People will walk into your life with promises of forever, but forever is often shorter than you expect. The ones you think will always be by your side may leave when the storms get too heavy. The world doesn't pause for your heartbreak, your loneliness, or your doubts. And if you haven't built the strength to stand alone, you will collapse under the weight of disappointment. Standing alone is not about rejecting love, friendship, or support. It's about knowing that even if all of it disappears, you will still rise. It's about being your own anchor in a world that can feel like shifting sand. Life has a way of testing you when you least expect it, pulling the rug from under your feet and daring you to find balance when everything feels unsteady. In those moments, no amount of waiting for someone else to rescue you will help. You are the only one who can save yourself. There is an unmatched confidence that comes when you realize you are enough. When you wake up in the morning and know that your dreams don't depend on anyone else's permission, you move differently. When you walk into a room knowing you can hold your head high without needing validation, people feel your PR, essence before you even speak. That kind of strength cannot be bought, borrowed, or gifted. It's earned through every tear you wiped on your own, every risk you took without a safety net, and every time you chose to keep going when quitting would have been easier. Loneliness can be terrifying, but it's also a classroom. It teaches you resilience, it teaches you self-trust, and it teaches you that your worth is not tied to who stays or who leaves. Too many people are afraid of solitude, so they cling to the wrong hands, tolerate the wrong company, and compromise their values just to avoid standing alone. But solitude is not a punishment, it's preparation. It shapes you into someone who cannot be broken by absence, silence, or betrayal. Life has a way of stripping away illusions. One day, the applause may stop, the phone may go silent, and the crowd may move on to the next big thing. And when that happens, you need to be strong enough to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am still here and I am still enough. The spotlight fades, but your inner light doesn't have to. That light is fueled by self-belief, by unshakable discipline, and by the refusal to let circumstances define your worth. You must learn to walk alone through the darkest valleys so that when people do walk with you, it's a choice, not a dependency. You will appreciate their presence, but you will never be enslaved by it. You will cherish love, but you won't fear its absence. You will welcome support, but you won't collapse if it's taken away. That is real power. The truth is, life will force you to stand alone at some point. Whether it's in your career, your relationships, or your personal battles, there will come a moment when it's just you and your courage. And if you've prepared yourself, if you've learned to trust your own strength, you won't fear it. You'll embrace it. Because standing alone doesn't mean you're weak or abandoned. It means you're strong enough to build a life that doesn't fall apart when others walk away. Standing alone is not about rejecting love, friendship, or support. It's about knowing that even if all of it disappears, you will still rise. It's about being your own anchor in a world that can feel like shifting sand. Life has a way of testing you when you least expect it, pulling the rug from under your feet and daring you to find balance when everything feels unsteady. In those moments, no amount of waiting for someone else to rescue you will help. You are the only one who can save yourself. You see, the world doesn't reward dependency, it rewards resilience. The people who move mountains and carve their names into history are not the ones who begged for help when life tested them, but the ones who chose to keep walking even when the path felt impossible. Standing alone is where your character is forged, where your true strength reveals itself. It's where you learn what you're really made of. And once you learn that, no one can take it from you. There will be moments when the silence around you feels suffocating, when you'll wish someone would just reach out and remind you that you matter. But silence can be your teacher. In that silence, you will hear your own voice, the one drowned out by noise, opinions, and expectations. In that silence, you will discover that the approval you've been chasing is nothing compared to the power of self-acceptance. Standing alone gives you perspective. It forces you to look at the people around you and ask yourself, who is really here for me and who is just here because it's convenient? When you can stand alone, you don't cling to people out of fear, you choose them out of genuine connection. You no longer tolerate disrespect because you don't need validation to feel complete. That's when you stop begging for scraps of attention and start demanding the respect you deserve. Strength is not built in the comfort of company. It is built in the fires of solitude. It's when you're the only one clapping for yourself, when you're the only one cheering for your dreams, when you're the only one believing in the vision that no one else can see. That's where greatness is born. Because when you learn to back yourself, the world eventually has no choice but to follow. Life will force you into situations where no one can walk the road for you. The exam, the audition, the business pitch, the heartbreak, the grief. There are moments when even if you're surrounded by people, the battle is yours alone. You are the one who has to breathe through the pain. You are the one who has to speak the words. You are the one who has to make the decision. And when that moment comes, the strength you've built by standing alone will be the very thing that saves you. There is nothing more magnetic than someone who doesn't need the crowd to feel worthy. People are drawn to those who radiate self-sufficiency, who stand tall without needing constant reassurance. That kind of presence cannot be faked. It comes from nights spent battling doubt, from mornings when you had to drag yourself out of bed with no one cheering you on, from choosing discipline over comfort again and again. And the best part is, once you've built that foundation, it never leaves you. You don't realize how strong you are until you have no choice but to be strong. That's why learning to stand alone before life forces you to is a gift you give yourself. Because when that storm does come, you won't panic. You'll know how to steady yourself, how to move forward step by step, even when the ground is shaking. You'll know that pain doesn't last forever, but the strength you build from it does. Standing alone also means learning to enjoy your own company. Too many people are terrified of being alone with themselves because they're not comfortable with who they are. But when you begin to embrace solitude, you unlock creativity, clarity, and peace that cannot be found in constant noise. You start realizing that your best ideas, your deepest healing, your strongest breakthroughs happen when you allow yourself to just be with you. The truth is, people will disappoint you. Not always because they mean to, but because they are human, and humans are flawed. They will leave when you least expect it. They will choose themselves, as they should, and sometimes that choice won't include you. If you've built your entire existence around others, their departure will shatter you. But if you've learned to stand alone, you will grieve, you will hurt, but you will not break. Every time you choose to do the hard thing on your own, you build a muscle. Every time you solve a problem without leaning on someone else, you grow a little stronger. Every time you say, I've got this, and mean it, you add another layer of resilience. One day, those muscles will carry you through battles that would have crushed the old you. And when that day comes, you will thank yourself for every lonely moment that shaped you. Do not confuse standing alone with isolation. It is not about rejecting people or cutting yourself off from love. It is about knowing you can survive without it. It is about enjoying company without needing it to feel whole. It is about walking into relationships as a complete person, not half of one. That's when your connections flourish, because you are not asking someone to fill your emptiness, you are sharing your wholeness. Think about the most powerful people you've ever admired. What makes them magnetic is not just their achievements, but their unshakable ability to stand tall even when the world doubted them. They kept moving when no one believed in them. They trusted themselves when no one else did. They stood alone long enough for others to finally see what they had seen in themselves all along. That's the kind of energy you create when you stop fearing solitude. Life is unpredictable. One day you may have everything. The next day it may be gone. Success, wealth, relationships, they can all vanish. If your identity is tied to them, you will feel empty when they disappear. But if your identity is tied to your inner strength, you can rebuild again and again. That's why standing alone is not just a survival skill. It's a superpower. There will be nights when you cry yourself to sleep, mornings when you question your path, and days when the weight of everything feels unbearable. But every time you rise after those nights, every time you get up and keep moving, you are proving to yourself that you don't need to be saved. You can be your own savior. That realization changes everything. So start now. Learn to go to that cafe alone. Learn to travel without waiting for company. Learn to celebrate your wins even if no one else claps. Learn to fight for your dreams even if no one else sees them. Learn to comfort yourself when the world feels cold. Because when you master that, you become unstoppable. You will walk differently when you know you can walk alone. You will speak differently when you know your voice carries weight, even if it stands in solitude. You will dream differently when you know that your vision doesn't require approval. And most importantly, you will live differently, fearless, bold, unshaken by loss. Because you've already built the foundation no one can take away. You will walk differently when you know you can walk alone. You will speak differently when you know your voice carries weight, even if it stands in solitude. You will dream differently when you know that your vision doesn't require approval. And most importantly, you will live differently, fearless, bold, unshaken by loss, because you've already built the foundation no one can take away. The beauty of learning to stand alone is that it frees you from the chains of expectation. You are no longer living for the applause of others, no longer tailoring your choices to avoid rejection, no longer shrinking yourself just to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. When you stand alone, you begin to live authentically. You follow the path that feels right to you, even if others don't understand it, because you no longer need their validation to move forward. That is freedom. The kind of freedom most people spend their whole lives chasing but never find, because they never had the courage to walk alone long enough to discover it. There's a quiet confidence in a person who is at peace with solitude. You can see it in their eyes, in their posture, in the way they carry themselves. They don't rush to fill silences, they don't chase after people who walk away, and they don't fear being misunderstood. They have built a life within themselves that no one can touch, and that energy is magnetic. People respect those who don't crumble under pressure, who don't beg for attention, who don't need constant reassurance. And the irony is that once you learn to stand alone, you often attract stronger, healthier relationships because you are no longer desperate to cling to anyone just to avoid loneliness. But the journey to get there is not easy. It requires courage to sit in the discomfort of your own company, to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, to admit your weaknesses and still choose to love yourself anyway. It requires discipline to keep showing up for your goals when no one is watching, to hold yourself accountable when it would be easier to give up, to nurture your dreams even when there's no immediate reward. It requires faith. Faith that the path you are walking, even if it's lonely right now, will lead to something greater. Standing alone means becoming your own motivator. It means speaking life into yourself when your mind is filled with doubt. It means reminding yourself of your worth when the world tries to convince you otherwise. It means choosing to see possibility where others only see failure. And it means hold in. G on to hope even when everything around you feels hopeless. That kind of resilience doesn't just happen. It's built brick by brick, moment by moment, every time you decide to rise instead of surrender. Sometimes people will misunderstand your independence. They will call you cold, distant, arrogant, or difficult. But what they are really seeing is a reflection of their own fears. Your ability to stand alone reminds them of their inability to do the same. And that will intimidate them, but never dim your light to make others comfortable. You were not put on this earth to shrink yourself for the sake of fitting in. You were put here to become the strongest version of yourself, even if it means walking paths that others are too afraid to take. Standing alone also sharpens your instincts. When you no longer depend on others to guide your every move, you begin to trust yourself. You start making decisions with clarity, not fear. You start listening to your inner voice, the one that always knew the way, but was drowned out by everyone else's opinions. And the more you trust yourself, the more powerful you become. Because the truth is, the answers you've been searching for outside of yourself have always been within you. You just needed the silence of solitude to hear them. There will be setbacks. There will be days when the weight of responsibility feels crushing, when you wish someone could just carry the burden for you. But remember, pressure creates diamonds. The very struggles you are facing alone today are shaping you into the person who will shine tomorrow. One day, you will look back at these lonely seasons and realize they were not punishments, but preparation. Preparation for the opportunities, the love, the success, and the life you were meant to live. And let me tell you, there is nothing more rewarding than looking in the mirror and realizing you built your say. Left, that every scar, every lesson, every victory came because you refused to give up on yourself. No one can take that pride away from you. No one can ever diminish the value of a person who stood alone and still rose. Think about this. If you can learn to stand alone, what can truly defeat you? Loss cannot defeat you because you know how to rebuild. Rejection cannot break you because your worth is not tied to acceptance. Failure cannot stop you because you see it as feedback, not the end. And loneliness cannot destroy you because you have already learned how to thrive in solitude. Once you master this, you become untouchable. Standing alone isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. It's about reaching a place where your happiness isn't dependent on circumstances, where your peace isn't tied to other people's actions, and where your success isn't dictated by anyone's opinion. It's about knowing that even if the world turns its back on you, you still have the power to create, to love, to achieve, and to shine. So when life tests you, when the people you counted on walk away, when the doors you thought would open slam shut in your face, don't see it as the end. See it as your opportunity to rise higher, to prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you ever imagined. Because every time you stand alone and keep going, you are building a strength that no force in this world can ever take from you. And eventually, standing alone becomes second nature. It no longer feels like a burden, but a privilege. A privilege to know yourself so deeply that no one can define you. A privilege to walk your own path without fear of judgment. A privilege to live a life rooted in authenticity and power. That's when you stop surviving and start living. And eventually, standing alone becomes second nature. It no longer feels like a burden, but a privilege. A privilege to know yourself so deeply that no one can define you. A privilege to walk your own path without fear of judgment. A privilege to live a leap. Fee rooted in authenticity and power. That's when you stop surviving and start living. Because life isn't about just existing, it's about living with intention, with purpose, with clarity. When you can stand alone, you begin to see that every step you take is a choice, not a reaction. You stop following the crowd simply because it's easier. You stop settling for less, simply because it's available. You stop allowing your circumstances to dictate your happiness. Instead, you create happiness within yourself, and that kind of happiness can't be shaken by external storms. Standing alone gives you the courage to take risks others are too afraid to take. You're no longer waiting for someone to validate your dreams, no longer waiting for permission to pursue what sets your soul on fire. You give yourself permission. You decide when it's time to leap, and you trust yourself enough to handle the fall, if it comes. And more often than not, you realize you were capable of flying all along. You just needed to stop waiting for wings from someone else. The truth is, most people will never understand your journey because it wasn't meant for them to understand. It was meant for you to live. And that's why standing alone is so essential. If you're always waiting for people to approve of your path, you'll never move. If you're always asking others for directions, you'll lose sight of your own instincts. But when you stand alone, you learn that the path unfolds as you walk it. Each step becomes clearer because you trust yourself to keep moving, even in uncertainty. It's in the quiet moments of solitude that you often find the deepest clarity. When you're not drowning in the voices of others, when you're not constantly distracted by noise, you begin to hear what your heart has been whispering all along. You begin to recognize what truly matters to you, not what society told you should matter. You start shedding the layers of expectation that never belonged to you in the first place. And that's when you start becoming who you were always meant to be. Standing alone is also about responsibility. It's about owning your choices, your actions, and your outcomes. Too many people blame others for their unhappiness, for their failures, for their lack of progress. But when you learn to stand alone, you stop pointing fingers. You start asking yourself, what can I do differently? How can I grow from this? What lesson is this teaching me? And in that accountability lies your greatest power. Because if you are responsible, you are also capable of changing your circumstances. When you master standing alone, rejection no longer terrifies you. You understand that rejection is simply redirection. That closed doors are guiding you toward better opportunities. That people walking away are making space for the ones who are truly meant to be in your life. Instead of crumbling when things don't go your way, you adjust, you adapt, you rise. Because you've already proven to yourself that you don't need perfect circumstances to keep moving forward. You just need the will to keep going. There's also a beauty in realizing that not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. Some people are meant to teach you lessons, some are meant to help you grow, and some are meant to push you into the very solitude that strengthens you. When you can stand alone, you no longer cling to what was never meant to stay. You let go gracefully, knowing that losing what isn't aligned makes room for what is. That wisdom only comes when you've embraced solitude and seen the gifts it carries. And the more you learn to stand alone, the less you fear change. Change becomes something you welcome instead of resist, because you know you have the strength to handle it. You stop fearing the unknown because you've already proven that you can create stability within yourself. You stop fearing loss because you've already learned that nothing external defines you. You stop fearing failure because you know it's not the end. It's simply part of the process. That's the power of solitude. It transforms fear into fuel. Standing alone also awakens a level of self-love that no one can give you. It's the kind of love that doesn't come from compliments, from attention, or from external validation. It's the kind of love that comes from looking at yourself, flaws, scars, mistakes, and all, and still choosing to say, I am worthy. It's the kind of love that allows you to set boundaries without guilt, to demand respect without apology, to pursue your dreams without hesitation. And once you have that love, you stop settling for anything less than what you deserve. But perhaps the most powerful part of standing alone is that it prepares you to stand with others in a healthier way. When you no longer depend on people to complete you, you can love them freely without fear. You can support them without resentment. You can walk beside them without losing yourself. Your relationships become richer, stronger, and more genuine because they are built on choice, not dependency. And that kind of connection is rare, but it starts with standing alone first. It's not always glamorous. There will be nights when your strength feels like a curse, when you wonder why the weight always falls on you, when you wish someone else could carry it for a while. But even in those moments, deep down, you will know this truth. You are capable. And that knowledge will keep you going. Because you've already proven that you can walk through fire and come out stronger. You've already shown yourself that you don't need saving. You can be your own savior. Standing alone doesn't mean you'll never feel fear, doubt, or sadness again. It means that when those emotions come, they don't control you. You acknowledge them, you feel them, but you keep moving anyway. You don't wait for courage to magically appear. You create it by taking action, even in uncertainty. And that is the very essence of strength. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to rise in spite of it. One day when you've walked far enough on this path, you'll look back and realize that standing alone was never about loneliness. It was about discovering your power. It was about realizing that everything you were searching for outside of yourself, strength, love, validation, peace, was within you all along. It was about becoming so rooted in who you are that no one and nothing could ever shake you again. And that's when you become unstoppable. That's when you realize that no matter what life throws at you, no matter who stays or who leaves, no matter how many times you fall, you will always rise. Because you've built the strength to stand alone, and with that, there is nothing you cannot face.